The day my parents told me to choose between my bank account and my family, I was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal like it was just another Tuesday morning. My mom slid a piece of paper across the table. A number was written on it. $93,000. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "This is what you owe us. For Kayla's wedding. And if you can't pay it, you're not our daughter anymore." I put my spoon down. I looked at my dad. He didn't say a word. He just stared at his coffee like the conversation wasn't even happening. And in that moment, something inside me went very, very quiet. Not sad, not angry, just done. My name is Mara. I'm 24 years old. I grew up in a suburb outside of Houston, Texas, the kind of neighborhood where everyone's lawn looks perfect and nobody talks about what actually goes on inside the houses. I have one sister, Kayla. She's 27. And for as long as I can remember, Kayla has been the golden child, the favorite, the one my parents built their whole identity around. I was the other one. I don't say that with bitterness, I say it because it's just the truth. My parents never hid it. Kayla got the car on her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass. Kayla got her college tuition paid in full. I took out loans and worked 2 jobs through 4 years of school. Kayla's room got remodeled twice. Mine still had the same carpet from 1998. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was stronger for it. That one day it would make sense. I should have known better. It started about 8 months before that kitchen table moment. Kayla got engaged to her boyfriend, Derek, a guy who drove a leased BMW and talked about his investment portfolio at every family dinner. My parents loved him, thought he was the second coming. The engagement party alone cost $6,000. My parents paid for it without blinking. Then came the wedding planning. Kayla wanted a destination wedding. Not just any destination, a full weekend resort takeover in Scottsdale, Arizona, 4-star hotel, catered dinners every night, a live band, a DJ, a photo booth, a custom floral installation that looked like something out of a magazine. The total came to just over $230,000. My parents didn't have that money. They never had that kind of money. My dad worked in logistics. My mom did part-time bookkeeping, but they'd been saving for Kayla's wedding since she was probably 12 years old. They had around $140,000 saved. That left a gap, and apparently I was the gap. I found out slowly. First it was small comments. "Mara, you're doing so well at your job, you must be saving a lot." I was a project coordinator at a mid-sized construction firm in Houston. I made decent money, not great, but I was building something. I had about $60,000 in savings that I'd been protecting for years. For a house, for my future. Then the comments got less subtle. My mom started calling me every Sunday, not to check in, to talk about the wedding budget, how much the caterer quoted, how the florist raised her prices, how Kayla was stressed, how Derek's family wasn't contributing enough, how this was a family effort. I kept saying, "Mom, I'll help where I can, but I have my own savings goals." And every time I said that, there was this silence on the other end of the phone, this cold, heavy silence. Like I was being selfish just by existing with money in my account. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the family group chat. My aunt, my cousins, my grandparents on my mom's side, they were all looped in on the wedding planning. And slowly, without me fully realizing it, my mom had been telling them all that I was contributing to the wedding, that I was handling a portion of the costs. I hadn't agreed to anything. When I called my mom to ask her about it, she said, and I will never forget this, Mara, "We didn't think we needed to ask. You're family. This is what family does." I told her I needed time to think. That's when things got ugly. The family dinner happened on a Saturday in March. My parents called it a wedding coordination meeting. I drove 40 minutes across Houston thinking it was just going to be logistics timelines, RSVPs, that kind of thing. When I walked in, the whole family was there. My Aunt Linda, my Uncle Greg, my cousins, my grandma, Kayla and Derek. My parents. Everyone looked at me like they'd been waiting. My dad cleared his throat and said, "Mara, we wanted to do this together, as a family. We need you to formally commit to your portion of the wedding costs." I said, "What portion?" Nobody told me what I was agreeing to. My mom pulled out a spreadsheet. My name was at the top. Next to it, $93,400. The room was completely silent. I looked around the table. My aunt was nodding like this was the most normal thing in the world. My grandma was looking at her hands. Kayla was picking at her manicure, not making eye contact. I said, "You're asking me to pay $93,000 for a wedding I had no say in planning?" My mom said, "You had every opportunity to be involved. You chose not to show up." That was a lie. I had been excluded from every planning meeting, every vendor call, every decision. I was never invited. I was just expected to write a check at the end. I said, "I'm not doing this." And that's when my dad, who had barely spoken to me in months, looked me in the eye and said, "Then you're not part of this family." Nobody flinched. Nobody pushed back. Not my aunt, not my cousins, not even my grandma, who I'd been close to my whole life. Kayla finally looked up. I actually thought she might say something. Might defend me, might say this had gone too far. Instead, she said, "Mara, you've always made everything about you." I picked up my keys, I walked to the door, and I left. I sat in my car in their driveway for probably 4 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. Then I drove away. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life, and not for the reason you might expect. It wasn't the fight. It wasn't even the money. It was the silence. Nobody called me. Not my mom. Not my dad. Not my Aunt Linda, who I'd grown up spending every Christmas with. Not one cousin. Not one text message. Not one missed call. It was like I'd been erased. I went to work every day. I sat at my desk. I answered emails. I made it through meetings without falling apart. But the moment I got home to my apartment, I would just sit on my couch and stare at nothing. I started questioning everything. Was I the selfish one? Was I wrong? Should I have just paid? Would it have been worth it trading $93,000 to keep my family? I want to be honest with you. There were nights I almost called my mom and said yes. That's how deep it ran. That need to belong. That fear that maybe they were right about me. 2 weeks after the dinner, my grandma sent me a text. It said, "I hope you reconsider. Kayla's wedding will happen with or without you. I just don't want you to miss it." She didn't say I love you. She didn't say what happened was unfair. She just said she hoped I'd fall in line. That text hurt more than any of it. I put my phone in a drawer and didn't look at it for 3 days. I cried more in those 30 days than I had in the previous 5 years combined. Not dramatic crying, just this quiet, hollow kind that happens at 2 in the morning when you realize the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally had conditions the whole time. But somewhere in that dark, something started to shift. It happened on a random Wednesday night. I was cleaning out my apartment just trying to stay busy, and I found a journal I'd kept in college. I flipped it open to a random page. It was a list I'd written at 20 years old. Things I wanted. A house of my own. A promotion. Travel. A life that felt like mine. And I realized something. Every single thing on that list I had been working toward it alone. My parents hadn't helped me get into college. They hadn't helped me get my job. They hadn't helped me save that $60,000. I had done all of that by myself while also convincing myself I owed them something. I didn't owe them my future. I called my best friend Maya the next morning. She'd been watching this whole thing unfold for months, quietly furious on my behalf. I told her I was done grieving, done waiting for an apology, done measuring my worth by whether my family approved of me. She said, "Okay, so what are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to build something they can't take from me." I spent that weekend making a plan. I'd been sitting on a business idea for 2 years, a small project management consulting service for independent contractors in the construction space. I knew the industry. I knew the pain points. I knew exactly what small firms needed because I'd been solving those problems from the inside for years. I had the savings. I had the skills. I had nothing left to lose. I spent 6 weeks building the groundwork nights and weekends after my regular job. I built a website. I reached out to 5 small contractors I'd worked with over the years. I offered them a free month of consulting to prove my value. 3 of them said yes, and then I got to work. Within 90 days, all 3 clients had signed paid contracts. Within 6 months, I had 8 clients. I was making more in a month from the consulting work than I was making in 2 months at my day job. I gave my notice at the firm on a Thursday morning. My manager asked me where I was going. I told him I was going to run my own shop. He shook my hand and said, "Honestly, Mara, I'm not surprised. That meant more to me than he'll ever know." 7 months after that family dinner, 7 months after being told I wasn't worth keeping unless I paid for the privilege, I closed on a house. A 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood in Austin. Hardwood floors. A backyard. A home office with a door I could close. Mine, fully mine. I sat in the empty living room the night I got the keys, just me and a cup of coffee, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peaceful, now. Here's where the story takes one more turn. Kayla's wedding happened in October. I wasn't invited, which was fine. I wasn't expecting to be. I saw the photos on Instagram the next day. It looked beautiful. I genuinely hope she was happy. But 3 weeks after the wedding, I got a call from my dad. He said the wedding had gone over budget. Significantly over. And some of the vendors hadn't been fully paid yet. He said things were tight. He said the family was stressed. Then he said, "We were hoping you might be able to help. I want to tell you I felt nothing. That I was cold and unbothered. But honestly, I felt sad. Not because I was going to say yes. Because I realized he genuinely didn't understand what had happened. He still saw me as the family resource. The one you call when you need something." I told him I was sorry they were struggling. I meant that. Then I told him I was unavailable to help, and I wished him well. He hung up without saying goodbye. My mom texted me 2 days later. It said, "After everything we've done for you." I read it. I put my phone down. I went back to the proposal I was writing for a new client. I didn't respond. That was 4 months ago. My consulting business now has 14 clients across Texas and 2 in Colorado. I'm on track to cross 7 figures in revenue by the end of next year. I have my house. I have my health. I have Maya and a small circle of people who actually show up for me, and I have something I never had growing up, the absolute certainty that I built this myself. I don't tell this story to make my parents look like villains. I tell it because I know someone watching this has been in that room. Maybe not with a number written on a piece of paper. Maybe it looked different for you. Maybe it was emotional pressure or guilt tripping or someone making you feel like your value to the people who love you is tied to what you can give them. And I want you to hear this clearly. Love that has a price tag isn't love. It's a transaction. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't building my business. It wasn't buying my house. It wasn't even walking out of that dinner. The hardest thing was accepting that I couldn't earn my way into being chosen by people who had already decided not to choose me. Once I stopped trying, once I stopped spending my energy trying to prove I deserved a seat at a table that was never set for me, everything changed. I stopped shrinking. I stopped apologizing. I stopped waiting. And I started building. So if you're sitting somewhere right now, feeling like you're not enough for the people who are supposed to love you most, I need you to know something. You don't need their permission to have a great life. You never did. Walk away if you have to. Quietly, without burning it down, without revenge. Just walk away and build something they'll spend the rest of their lives wishing they hadn't cost themselves. That's exactly what I did. and I have never looked back.